from between the United States and Africa as part of the conversations that are happening around African Energy Week. And so the panelists have been introduced, and so we're going to jump right in. Let me start with kind of the theme that we're looking to explore. It's really a conversation around, if you think about recent policy shifts or even funding cuts from the U.S. government in a variety of ways in terms of what's happening with the current administration. The questions is really, despite those shifts and despite those issues, one thing remains clear, and that is that American companies and investors and the ecosystems that surround them are deeply engaged in Africa's energy sector. And there's a shared commitment about identifying, bankable opportunities, fostering economic growth, and supporting Africa's right to chart its own energy path. And so, with the esteemed panelists that we have today, we will explore four key themes around policy, around risk, around bankable opportunities, around the investment climate, partnership. All of these things we'll try to explore. There's quite a few of us, and so I'm going to stop talking and see if we can't begin to jump right in. And if I may, the first category that we'll try to jump in here on is around policy and investment climate. And so, Mr. Ekbo, if I could turn to you first and ask for some of your thoughts around policy or regulatory innovations that you see as most critical for attracting sustainable investment.
All right, thank you very much, the moderator. First and foremost, let me express my sincere thanks to the organizers of Energy Week that we are having today to chart the way forward for Africa. It is important, it is critical, and I believe will continue until we get to the promised land. Yeah, for Nigeria, instance, the climate, the investment climate is very clear. The government have put policies and regulations in place to encourage investors into the space. Beginning with what we call the Petroleum Industry Act, the PIA 2021 in our country, Nigeria. Some regulations has been put in place to encourage investors, which of course begin with long-term investment strategy, and then at the same time, we talk about the investment climate that will really attract investors, streamlining some little regulations to encourage investors to come into the space, as well as long-term investment period, since gas investment will take a longer time. Beyond this, the President of the Federal Republic of Nigeria, His Excellency President Bola Ahmed Tinubu, has rolled out some executive orders which tend to support the regulation to provide a conducive atmosphere for investors, which begins with reducing bottlenecks that are associated with regulation, and then reducing contracting timelines for investors to move into the space, as well as improving fiscal terms to encourage investors into the space. This, to a larger extent, tends to bring about what we call the zero hydrocarbon tax, so that investors can move in, and then reducing royalty rates as with reference to gas exploration within the frontiers, as well as for deep water, you gain carbon credit when you move into gas exploration in the deep water. So it has been a wonderful climate that has been put forward. And beyond this, we have what we call Decade of Gas in our country, Nigeria, that I'm the chairman. They sit at the front line to ensure that gas is given priority, to make sure industrialization and other projects are move on really in our country, because for now, when you talk about base load, gas is the only solution to enhance that. So We believe with all this put in place, investors can come in and take advantage of the over 210 trillion cubic feet of gas that we have in the reserve. Thank you very much.
No, thank you. Appreciate those comments. And I'm going to stay, I'll say, in continent, in Cole, go to you in terms of shoreline natural resources, your thoughts around the investment climate from a policy standpoint, or just from the climate in terms of attracting investment.
I think, thank you very much for the invitation, NG, and to the esteemed audience as well. One key moving position as an operator in Nigeria is the executive order the president signed in. And that changed some major dynamics in the oil and gas sector. One, for many years, $2 million was the limit as an operator in Nigeria. That moved to 10 million. So you can imagine how much you could spend for facilities and upgrades with 10 million without having to go through a major tender process. The other thing is the whole sequence of contracting in the sector. Those tied together has been a massive shift to operators in being able to deliver value faster for the country. So if you look at Nigeria's production since then, it's been on the up, and as the Honorable Minister said, all the driving incentives to focus on gas as well is making it very interesting for investors in the market. So the dynamics of both policy and actual forthright focus in trying to deliver value is making the sector very, very interesting. One area I think we need to look at is if you look at what's happened globally. Africa for now with 1.4 billion people, we're just focusing on our first industrial revolution. And to achieve that, we need to use every source of energy to develop, and because we've got a very teeming population, very youthful population, but to create that, you need the right policy, the right leadership in making sure that works.
Thank you for those comments. And so I'm going to shift to Washington. So we'll give a few of you a heads up here. So Andy Rapp, first with you as an advisor to Secretary Wright, Secretary of Energy for the United States. Your thoughts about investment climate and policy as you think about U.S. investment in Africa?
Yeah, I'll start with thanking the organizers and what an honor to be here. It's a huge priority for the United States overall. It's a huge priority for the Department of Energy, and I'll tell you that it's a personal priority for the Secretary. And so, in terms of trying to do everything we can to help incentivize investment and try and really build partnerships between the U.S. and Africa, I think the energy business is risky. It has reservoir risk and operational risk and commodity risk. And so I think the comments that you've made around the regulatory environment and really making sure that there's a clear, a clear set of rules, a clear set of expectations going in to make these huge commitments, I think that's first and foremost what increases confidence and what brings in a larger, makes it available to companies beyond just the largest, and most sophisticated super majors in the world. And I think that will bring, with that you bring, competition's a good thing. You have efficiencies. You have different skill sets and talents that are, interested to come and participate really in the industrialization, the increase in energy access, really this philosophy of energy addition. That's a priority for the Department of Energy, and nowhere do we feel like that can be more impactful and increase prosperity and better human lives than here in Africa. So, that's going to be our goal as an agency, and that has support at the very highest levels of the administration. And so we have, great focus and great support at the U.S. to do everything we can, through our tools. We have obviously financial resources, but diplomatic and I would say relationship resources to really try and inspire confidence and certainty in industry that'll ultimately have to execute, the great, the great opportunity in front of Africa.
No, thanks for the comments. Mark Menez, I want to come to you now, but I want to kind of stretch the conversation towards not just the investment climate, but the concept of U.S.-Africa partnerships. In this move towards a partnership approach, how do U.S. institutions and companies best support Africa's energy ambitions from where you're sitting?
Yeah, thank you, Mark. Thank you for the question. I, too, join in giving thanks to S&P Global for putting this panel on, and, of course, to our sponsors for the event. Too, it's a privilege to be here. I am President and CEO of the United States Energy Association. We're over a 100-year-old organization that has worked with the U.S. Government to carry out its energy policies, throughout the world and in the U.S. And it strikes me that the announcements of of Your Excellencies announcing the EOs that were issued by your president, I'm sure everyone has read about how President Trump has issued a bunch of executive orders too, where energy is on the ascendant once again, in all types of energy. Gone are the days when there's any restrictions at all in opportunities for investment in all types of energy, including fossil fuels. So from the U.S.'s point of view, you look at Africa, you see a resource-rich country. We see a partnership necessary for energy sources, but also for the minerals that it has. So with this administration, you have seen restrictions now lifted from the U.S. Ex-Im Bank, whereas they had restrictions in the past on types of projects that you can invest in. That's gone. You can see the U.S. Trade Development Authority. You can see the Development Finance Corporation, all of these institutions within the United States government. Of course, Andy's Department of Energy is one. That now we are unleashing opportunities. It's very important that we establish these long-term partnerships with Africa. I attended several panels today where Russia was offering all kinds of different opportunities with the nations of Africa and projects, China too. The Trump administration has made clear that he sees energy as necessary for global security, and it's a priority. And so he is unleashing opportunities to work with his government in ways that can establish long-term partnerships to put the infrastructure in place. And I'll finally close with this. It's also great to create opportunities for business transactions and investments today. Organizations like the United States Energy Association also focus on regulatory schemes, transparency, on how you finance organizations, a true understanding of how business is done. And I'm sure other panelists will talk about that. But Mark, that's sort of how we view things.
No, thank you for those comments. And Andrew, let me come to you over at Cosmos Energy and again get your thoughts around partnerships. And even if you want to, reflect back on the climate for investment, feel free to comment on that as well. If I could pull you into this.
Yet again, it's a great pleasure to be on the panel. I think on the climate for investment, I think one of the things that I reflect on is taking longer to get things done. The IEA report recently said from signing a license to first production has moved to 20 years. And it's more than just the clarity of the regulatory environment. It's actually, I think, drive from the top to get things done, where there's leadership in the country that is clear about how to debottleneck and make things happen. I think you're seeing that in the U.S. today, and it's going to be a major source of growth, I think, for the industry. I think we've talked about the difference it's made in Nigeria. So I think we talk very sort of plasticky way around, regulation, the consistency and so on. It's more than that. You have to create a climate where you can get things done. And, we were very fortunate to make the discovery in Jubilee. We signed a license in 2004. We drilled the first well 2007, first production in 2010, so sort of 7 years. That was transformational for Ghana. It was actually transformational for our company. But it wouldn't have happened if there hadn't been the support from, the very top of the organization to the country to make it happen. So that partnership, I think, is important. I think, those that move fast win big, and I think as the African countries compete for capital, the ones that actually have an environment that is conducive to that type of approach will really win.
So I think that environmental side of it is huge. When you look at it as a U.S. company operating in Africa, we bring financing. You know, we have American shareholders, we have American credit holders. You know, we bring technology. We're an operator in the Gulf of America, so those deep water skills are the things that we can bring that can make a difference. And it's great to be supported by an administration now in the U.S. that believes in our industry. It makes my equity story a lot easier. I don't quite get the same number of questions around things that I don't think are core to shareholder value anymore. And I think it's great that we're getting alignment around an agenda where I'm passionate about the importance of the development of Africa's hydrocarbon resources to benefit the countries, to create economic growth that will fundamentally create stability and social progress. And that is the core of, you know, why I like coming, because that's what NJ believes in. I think everyone in this room believes in that. Yeah. And it's great to have a supportive government in my homeland that actually believes in that as well. That'll create a difference. It's going to create better access to financing. It's going to create a better environment for me to advocate for investment here. But that's what we need to do. And if we can do that and bring the best technology, the best governance, as American companies, I believe we can make a big difference. We're just started, I think, on that agenda. But I think we're focused on the real issues today as opposed to the issues that have been inhibiting my ability as a company to deploy capital here.
Yeah, thank you for that. Jude, let's get you into this conversation. And so if you think about the conversation we've just had and the comments around policy, investment, climate, U.S.-Africa partnership, you and I were talking earlier about you've supported companies, your firm or firms you've worked for, on how to do business on the African continent. And so I was in some earlier conversations today, not only about how do you go get investment in, but how do I get money coming back out. So maybe you can talk about in terms of the risk that might float in that area of concerns, right? And what are your thoughts in terms of maybe what's changed and where you see things going?
Yeah. So thanks, Mark. First of all, let me also thank the organizers of this conference, NJ in particular, but also the sponsors. One of the indicators that risks are being somewhat mitigated and potential investors think risks have been mitigated is the difference between this conference this year and the one that we had 5 years ago. The number of people looking to get into this conference and looking to participate grows exponentially every time we have it. And all of them believe that there's an opportunity here. That doesn't mean that they shouldn't do their due diligence and make sure that once they get in, as you said, they can also get out, at least get their returns out. The concept of risk ebbs and flows within Africa and in any other jurisdiction, but the trajectory has been phenomenal. And in the oil industry in particular, they have benefited tremendously from the goodwill that African governments have shown to them, but they've benefited also because they've shown goodwill to Africa. So even the difficult issues, sometimes there are difficult issues around, foreign exchange, repatriation of profits and the like, those are being addressed. In this country, in South Africa in particular. When I first moved here to run our office here, there was a very strict, sort of ban on repatriation. So essentially what you made here, you basically had to keep here for some considerable period of time. Over time, reasonable conversation overcame that. We're dealing with some restrictions still with regards to foreign exchange and foreign controls. They are also being dealt with. The truth of the matter is most African-producing countries want U.S. participation in particular. And so that demand drives them to make the changes that are necessary. I just think that the horizon for African producers and oil company services companies, they're growing here. When I first came to this continent in 1980 as a student in Nigeria, the sum total of African producers essentially in sub-Saharan Africa was 3 or 4 countries. And we all believed that that was the sort of horizon. Well, the horizon keeps growing. So the good news is that there's great opportunity, and we don't know yet how great that opportunity is. The other good news is that even with regards to what are viewed now as some of the risks, African governments are happy to look at them and to try and do whatever they need to do to get that investment to continue to come in.
No, thank you very much. Appreciate those comments. And Jim, I'll put you to work. You're not here just to observe. So as you listen to this, I think about your opening comments about this is not just an event. This is a gathering of policymakers, of executives who are looking to put talk into action, visions into investments. And so at this point, this far into the week, how are you feeling? How are you reacting to what you're hearing here on stage?
I feel good about it, and I think that we've seen some clear actions coming into this, and I'm very happy with the minister's comments on how Nigeria is cutting red tape and all of that. And you got Andy here. I was just reminded. He just reminded me of one of my best friends in Equatorial Guinea, Leoncio. And funny, the world is so funny. Andy and I walked on the same side. When he was at Pitcher and Partners advising Equatorial Guinea government's asset violations and everything. So he's someone who understands energy well. He understands Africa well, understands our assets and what needs to be done and how to get it. So it's really good and really refreshing that you get a guy like this sitting with Secretary Wright giving direction. But let me tell you what I feel now better than last year or 2 years ago. 2 years ago, we were at a time when they told us it felt bad to talk about energy. Nobody wants to talk about being an oil man. It was all about just lie to them about being an energy man. Today, I feel the United States is back in Africa. We can do deals, and we're seeing real commitments. Forget the aid thing. We spent $3 trillion in aid. What happened? We've not seen no real progress. But today, what are we seeing? We're seeing real partnerships. And I tell you that, they went with action. You had money that had been stuck with Exim Bank for a long time, $4.7 billion. Guess what happened? They came right in within the first 3 months, approved. Bang, $4.7 billion going to Mozambique. Tomorrow, the force majeure in Mozambique is going to be lifted. February this year, this administration committed to energy. And they called me. First time an American administration called me, it's like, where are you? I've been like, listen, I'm in Joburg, my wife going to take me out for my birthday. Like, get up yourself, get out here in Saudi Arabia. So we sat in Saudi Arabia with my good friend Tommy Joyce, gave us the biggest voice between the IEF, IEA, everything. They listen. They have listened. You know what? Look at the IEA. Look at its report on Africa. The Trump administration has been the first to say, your reports about peak oil and oil demand and oil changing, they took the African position. They told the IEA to revisit that. Guess what happened? You know what happened last week? The IEA says now starts saying that we need $560 billion investment into oil and gas. That's what the Trump administration made them to do, to revise the standard, because they look at energy and they say energy, it's going to be for the OECD. They didn't count us. The Trump administration made them count us, and they moved to that. Next thing they did is, I talked to him about clean energy, and they're using LPG to get us out of clean cooking. 1 billion people in Africa no access to clean cooking. What they do, they said, get your ass over here with us in Boston. Send the Assistant Secretary of Energy. He sat there with us. They launched Secretary Wright's new partnership with Africa and with the world to deal with one specific issue, clean cooking. We're going to try to do our best to use, listen, nothing against solar or wind energy, but we're going to use oil, gas, LPG to get people out of clean cooking. I'll tell you one last one. Yes, another thing that I think that I'm seeing as a big change, and I'm listening to these guys, multilateral banks not being able to fund fossil fuels. It's been a big, without the World Bank coming in and funding fossil fuels, because what is the World Bank? It's a development bank. How come a development bank is condemning people to poverty? So they're breaking these bottlenecks that is choking us on financing and getting off stuff. But morally, they've stood with guaranteeing that billions of people can get out of energy poverty. Billions of people can use our oil and natural gas to get ourselves to development. So it's no longer a crime or a shame. Before, when I said drill, baby, drill, everybody look at me with a smirk. Now I wear it on my sleeve and I'm not scared. Thank God to this partnership, and we need to be encouraging it, because that's how we drive money to make sure that the little guy becomes the big guy. And I think we've seen a new era of energy dominance, but we've seen a new era of African energy opportunities, but we need to back it by finance. And Minister, you all need to tear down this bottleneck so that a lot more money can come in, because there's so much more that the Americans can do, but you need to create that environment that capital can be unleashed on our country, and it comes in. And we have a moment right now in Africa. Seize it. Seize that moment. Drive it, because you don't know what's going to happen in the future. In the future, they're going to send you the bartender from New York to come tell us not to use energy, or they send that young girl from the Scandinavian. We don't need that. We need all oil, all sources, and let's produce and drill, baby, drill.
So I have to come up with another word than passion, NJ, for the way you talk about this issue. And I'm serious about that. That's fantastic. Thank you very much. Thank you. Right, the message received. And so, Minister Echo, if I may come back to you.
All right, then.
Besides the capital that U.S. companies can bring in, and Andrew commented on, there's technology, there's resources, there's know-how coming in. How is Nigeria ensuring that partnerships translate into local capacity development, the technology transfer, and job creation for the citizens of your country? What are your thoughts on that?
Thank you very much. Job creation, capacity building is very, very critical in our country, Nigeria. And that is why we have a parastatal that is called, we call it local content, whereby any company that is operating in Nigeria will have to collaborate with the NCDMB and to make sure they build local content and transfer technology. And in other words, Nigerians have to be involved in whatsoever they are doing to acquire the knowledge and drive it along the line. We have the resources, and then the investors that are coming in, like US, they have the technical know-how on such investment. Like yesterday, I was having a meeting with the representative of the Department of Energy, rolling out some of the projects that we have in Nigeria that can partner with us. And this will go a long way to develop some of the projects that we have on ground. And I equally inform them of the climate, the conducive climate that we have in Nigeria based on the regulatory reforms that have taken place and the presidential executive orders. So we are really concerned about building capacity. So with NCDMB collaborating with investors into the space, capacity is being built and technological transfer is being achieved. Thank you.
No, thank you.
Mark, can I just add a quick
Please.
short note to the Minister's comments? In addition to bringing capital, which U.S. companies are very good at bringing commitments to corporate social responsibility and commitment to local content, it's also bringing goodwill. Really just bringing goodwill and with an intention to see these African hosts evolve as the company itself evolves. In 2014, NJ and I and others in this room actually helped to host the president of Equatorial Guinea in an investment summit in Washington, D.C. The president's first words was that, it's not just coincidental that he's in the U.S. For this important event. It is because he really, really credited the U.S. for bringing Equatorial Guinea out of poverty. Not because they had to. They were there to make a profit, and they made that profit. But they also were very insistent on showing their goodwill to Equatorial Guinea. And Equatorial Guinea evolved in ways in just those few years that no one could have expected. So it's bringing goodwill and commitment to the same goals that the Africans themselves have. So
thanks for the added color. That's important. No, really appreciate that. Cole, I'm going to go to you and ask, does that, for Shoreline, does that translate in terms of what we were talking with the minister just about, in terms of the localization of technology, know-how, expertise, and then ultimately jobs for the employees of Shoreline from a local perspective?
I think the big elephant in the room is the global companies. So the Shells, the Chevrons, Hess, started right-sizing the portfolios on the continent. And that created companies like ourselves by acquiring some of these assets. But what happens is, because if you look at a country like Nigeria, we're in the third generation of oil men in Nigeria, right? 60 years. So you've got a lot of local expertise that's now able to be exported into the other markets on the continent. Mm-hmm. And that's creating a cohesion of very structured, well-run companies that's got ability, but now able to muster global capital to deliver. If you look at our company today, in Nigeria, we're producing just under 70,000 barrels a day. By every standard, that's a huge amount of production. But why and how is that? Look, the biggest problem in most of this right-sizing transactions is not below ground problems. The oil is there. Yeah. Most of it is facilities, and that means money. And this is where the U.S. government, the U.S. companies with technology and the right support financing from the likes of DFC, U.S. Exxon can come in. You manufacture onshore America, you can then export into markets like ours to help exacerbate and quicken this facility revamp in making sure we have much better and faster delivery. But education is very strong on the continent. Knowledge and know-how is there. Oil is being explored and exploited on this continent for about 60 years, minimum. So you have people, you have quality, and now we have proper regulation that's been enforced, put in place by different governments to entice different types of investors. If you couple all that together, success is the limit.
Yeah, and I'll just hop in, tag on to, I think it ties into everything that's being said here, that, I'm biased, but I feel like energy is not just a industry, it's the industry, because it enables all the other industries. And so when you talk about talent and technology transfer, you talk about education opportunities, you talk about community national benefit then that's left behind. I think that a reliable, affordable energy system that's based on natural gas, probably primarily, that can actually deliver low-cost, high-temperature processed heat. All of a sudden, you can industrialize. This is a focus in the United States, is reindustrializing America. I think you can start talking about other sectors, other really, really well-paying long-term jobs that are available to a booming workforce that can be in manufacturing, and you've got plastics and cement and aluminum, and you need electricians, you need plumbers, and you need all of these jobs that, there's an exponential beneficial impact to really having a well-developed, prolific energy system that's accessible and local, that goes beyond just the people that then get the know-how of engineering and operations, et cetera, for that company or that industry. It enables several other, industries on the back of that.
No, thank you for that. And actually, picking up off of what Jude had said, and then Cole, your comments, but it's not just about the resource in the ground. It's what happens after it comes out and all of the great economic development and benefits that come, that follow that. And then that each country, each jurisdiction has the ability to continue to see the investment to move downstream, which is fantastic. Andrew, let me come over to you and start to think a little bit about the future. By the way, you guys are a fantastic panel because you're really helping me manage the time with your answers, and we're covering a lot of ground here, so thank you very much. But if you look ahead, Andrew, what are your top recommendations when you think about making Africa a more attractive destination for U.S. capital? So for that capital to continue to flow and maybe even accelerate. So recommendations about making Africa more attractive.
Fundamentally, I come back to the biggest challenge today is that Africa doesn't miss the opportunity of putting its resources at the forefront of energy demand over the next couple of decades. I think, the IEA report is all about underinvestment. I think it's about things taking longer. You can look at an environment in the U.S. today. We operate in the Gulf of America. It's pretty easy to get stuff done in the Gulf. Yeah? And so the challenge ultimately is to be able to be in an environment where you can deliver on the promises you're making to your shareholders, the people that back my equity and my credit holders. And that is to me the most important thing, that you can get things done. And I think there's a reciprocal requirement for us to deliver on our promises. When we turn up, we deliver the projects on time, we deliver them in a way that benefits the country. There is a genuine reciprocal undertaking. So for me, one of the things that remains important to my company is that we create a mutual agenda. And that agenda has to be founded on what's good for the country is paramount for what we're doing. If we're aligned on the agenda, I believe the doors will be open for us to progress. One of the things we talk about is, Cosmos can't be successful in a country if the country's not successful. It's country first, company second. And sometimes you lose that in the detail of getting things done. So for me, one of the things that we ask of the country is to enable us to get things done. I think one of the things that the country has to ask of us is be aligned on our agenda, fulfill your promises, deliver the technology, build the capability. If you do all of that, then there's no better place to work. Yeah, and so, I'm excited about everything I've done on the continent. There's way more to do. The depth of the resource here, the depth of the capability is huge. And, I hope we're a small company. We do, deep water really well. We bring the technology. We were talking earlier today, one of the things that differentiates us is we don't move people around. We have local country managers that have been working for a decade. They know the country, etc. So how do we bring that commitment and dedication where if you focus on the problems, you're going to make a difference?